As we approach the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, you're going to hear a lot of stories about people, places, and things that are typically in the history books. The reality is that America wasn't just made by those people, by those places, and by those events. America was also made in places like this. This place named Toe Hill. Today's the first episode of America 250, my series on people, places, and things that you didn't necessarily hear about or learn about in the history books. I am the Giant Rat, and I'm asking you, I'm inviting you to come along on this adventure to Toe Hill. Let's get moving. Now this is a little unexpected as far as weather goes. I figured it'd be a little nicer and a little less snow. We're in central Pennsylvania, not far from State College, Penn State University, and the geographic heart of the state. At first glance, this looks like quiet woods, game lands, which is what it is. A place most people pass without a second thought. But hidden here is one of the most overlooked stories in this region, and one that deserves to be told properly. This ridge is known as Toe Hill. Today it's forest, but 2 centuries ago it was something else entirely. Iron bearing ground, you see down there, close to the surface enough to be worked by hand. To be worked by hand enough to change who came here and why they stayed. These woods are thick. So there's a reason why there was a story here. And it has a lot to do with thick woods. Very quiet here, except for the wind howling through the trees. It is a well-traveled path. Someone, imagine, will run into as their dog's out, or dog. We saw somebody parked where I entered the woods. Here alone, so I guess it makes it a little more spooky given that. You can see we're right at the edge of the game lands because it's posted property just above us here. Now that there is a big old log. That thing has been down for a long time. Even looks like somebody might have tried to cut through it. So I just met the owner of the dogs, and she had three, I don't know, looked like healers, dogs of some type, but man, this is kind of steep down here, and you can see some mining features here. So there looks like maybe some holly, some mountain holly, but let's take a look. We have here a lot of trees down here, so you can tell the wind really rips through here. But oh yeah, this is some of the stuff we're looking for. This was part of the Toe Hill mining operation. This was all surface mining, so there won't be sinkholes per se, like you'd find in coal mining operations. They were digging iron up from the ground all through here. You can clearly see. I found plenty of it right here. Now on camera, you're not going to see the depth of that. It would certainly be very easy to get lost in these woods. Looking at some of the foot traffic from down below, it wouldn't surprise me if that didn't happen to some people, and once they found the mining area, they just climbed right back up. Wow, that's a deep cut. I couldn't tell you how deep, but that is really deep. All along this trail you have holes like this right here. I've seen them in a number of different places here so far, just on this short walk. I don't know if they were exploratory holes or what, but you see them in several places. So maybe this is where I kind of dug to see if there was any iron to be found. Now, this is an abandoned place other than being a hunting ground. But I don't see anything where people dumped anything. This area looks a little different. All this scrub brush here. I'm not really sure what that is. But this right here is very different from the rest of the forest. And I'm just wondering if that isn't the kind of area that we're looking for to tell our story today. Now this part of the trail could have been part of the rail lines that came through here to haul the ore away and to service the mines. I'm not sure about that, but it sure looks like what could have been a rail bed. Now there is a path, sort of paths into the woods. Right there's one that somebody took to go up that way. Yeah, so this is a walking path that will take us back around. We will come back, but this is where we're going. This is clearly a path not heavily followed. So much of this is overgrown. And to tell you the truth, I will not stay on this path for very long. For fear of getting lost. Because that's one thing I do not want to do. Traipsing around in central Pennsylvania forest, getting lost. There looks to be another cut from the mining. Possibly. Or actually, that's not a cut. That, my friends, looks like a rail bed. Possibly. Likely. Cutting right down through there. Now, I could be wrong. There's a lot of people that know a heck of a lot more than me. That's what it looks like to me. Now, Toe Hill was not just a mining site. It was a place where people lived. Census records and regional documentation show that a small community existed here in the early 1800s. This community was made up of free black residents, black men and women, families, raising their kids here in this area. In central Pennsylvania at this time, black communities were rare. Not unheard of, but uncommon enough that their presence here is remarkable. Several individuals recorded in nearby census documents were born in Virginia. Now, why is that significant? Well, for people born there, freedom often came through escape, manumission, or relocation, and places like Tow Hill offered something valuable: distance, isolation, and work. And you can clearly see this is isolation, this is distance, and it's believed that the residents lived in a place very similar to here. You see there was mining, there was trains, railroad here. Sometime in the early 1800s, a black man, his name lost to time and record, settled along this ridge. He didn't choose Tow Hill because it was easy. He chose it because it was out of the way. Tow Hill sat far from towns, courts, and attention, close enough to work, but distance from scrutiny. Cabins here were small, functional, built near the tree line rather than open clearings. Local tradition holds that apple trees were planted nearby, not as orchards, but as markers of staying. You don't plant a tree if you want to leave tomorrow, right? Iron was worked here by hand. Think about that, by hand. No furnaces, no industry, just men extracting ore, selling it locally, feeding furnaces all up and down the valley, including places like Center Furnace. It wasn't wealth, but it was independence. Tow Hill functioned as a refuge, a place where people on the margins could live, work, and remain largely unnoticed. While no formal documentation survives proving Underground Railroad activity here, the location, timing, Quaker presence nearby, and demographics make Tow Hill consistent with places that quietly supported freedom seekers. This is not a town on a map. It was a place people chose. Now eventually, the hill changed. As industrial mining expanded elsewhere, this land became more valuable. Surveys, claims, consolidations. The same isolation that once protected Tow Hill now made it easy to absorb. There's no record of violence, there's no burning cabins, just pressure, economic and inevitable. People of Tow Hill didn't just vanish, they moved. Some appear later in records in Bellefonte and surrounding towns, including Marysville, which some houses still survive over there, not from that era. Some appear later in records. Others disappear into the broader population, their story no longer remarkable enough to note. But for a time, this place mattered as a refuge, as a place to raise a family, even in these tough winters, in this tough environment, this untenable soil. People survived. Again, we're not saying that this was part of the Underground Railroad, but it's possible. It's very likely that somebody, a black man and woman, born in Virginia, probably weren't here by choice. They were running, maybe. And this is a darn good place to hide, I'll tell you that right now. Man, there is a tree over there so old. Look at that tree right there. That is crazy. Look at that. All twisted up. there's ruins here. I did not expect to see ruins right here. But my guess is that this might have been part of the rail bed. And most likely, if we went over there, you'd probably see similar structure. There's pipes. There's something here. Yeah, this is rebar. It's all grown over. These ruins. My guess is if you dug a little deeper, you'd find some more. But you can clearly see this land might have been used for people to build their home. Man, if I believed in Sasquatch, I gotta tell you, all these tree knocks. Now I plan to dive a little deeper into this land. There's more of a story right here. You can clearly tell there was some industrial work up here, all along here. There's man-made hills, digs. Who knows what's on the other side? But I have a responsibility not to wander too deep and get lost. Maybe without snow on the ground and a partner here with me, I might take a few more chances, but we'll walk down here a little bit further and see if we can see any ruins. Clearly, this was worked. You can see dirt piled. There's a pond right below us. In the snow, I'm not going to break my leg climbing up that hill, that little hub there. But right here is that concrete feature that we were just at. And there's another one. This might have been the ore washer in this site. Or it could have been, you know, part of a building. There were some buildings here, you know, a factory, of course. There was a boarding house for the workers and their families to live in. This wasn't exactly a town, it's just a mining operation. And there's another little hole there. And all these mounds. I'm not really sure what's up with the ground here. It seems a little shaky. It is possible that the residents of Tow Hill, these black men and women, these families, lived in an area like this where it was cleared out. They left because they didn't want to be caught up in all this industrial mining stuff. Through this tree cover, you can see one of the ponds here. These ponds don't have names, but clearly they were part of the mining operation, especially this one. It's frozen over right now. This particular pond could be one of the many habitats for some of the rare frogs, lizards, and other wildlife in the area. I am not climbing down there because I don't know what this all holds. But it's a nice sized pond. This is what I had to walk through to get down there. Now later on in the springtime, you might be able to find some leftover rail or ties, because if I'm being honest, it's kind of what this looks like an old rail bed. There's was another collection or retention pond. Lots of the mine workings here. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this was very likely a rail bed. This looks to be another pond area or separation between the two ponds, following tracks that were already made, but we are right on top of mining. This is clearly from the mining digs. This gives my better judgment to go here, but I'm following some pre-existing tracks here. With a lady with the dogs, and I'm pretty sure she had a pretty darn good idea where she was going. But giant rat, what if the snow blows over the tracks? What are you gonna do then? That's a good question. I guess this boy that's wondering would be lost. It's amazing. The mind can play all kinds of tricks on you. The noises that you hear. The depth to these mine cuts is just unbelievable. I never expected to find that out here like that. I thought maybe a few spots, a few holes here and there. That was it. But no, this is a full-fledged operation. Now we, on our little hike today, got to see mining remains, and we talked about the village that was here. And I think that's an important story about slavery and the plight of the African American people in that area, or in that era, that chose this place to set up residence and more or less hide from society. Of course, later they had to integrate when they dispersed. There's a lot of information about how black folk were treated in places like Bellefonte in that era. But something important that went on here other than that, and that is the mining, which again, we saw the remains of that. But a lot of the black folk here integrated with white people across this range at Scotia. There are pictures of black folk working with white folk, taking pictures, smiling. They got along here in the work area, at least. With these pits, they're what most people notice. They're only part of the story, as we saw today. The real history here isn't just what was taken from the ground here. It's who stood on it. Toe Hill wasn't built to last, but it lasted long enough. Long enough for people to carve out lives of their own choosing. Long enough to matter. In part 2, we follow the iron and the people down the hill into Scotia. I'm the Giant Rat. And this was the adventure. The first, as we explore 250 years of the United States of America from the standpoint of people, places, and events that didn't make the history books. Now touch some grass or a churro and join me on the next episode of America 250 in about a month as we explore the next chapter. Thanks for coming along.